Welcome to Multifamily Syndication Unscripted, a show that teaches investors the truth about multifamily real estate. Your hosts, Ben Leybovich, Sam Grooms, and Scott Hollister have more than 30 years of combined experience in real estate and finance. We are active multifamily syndicators and operators, providing you with detailed and cycle-appropriate content. Absolutely no fluff. So, if you want to be smarter about how and where you put your capital to work, listen up. You will learn what works in today's market conditions.
Not a bad thing. Not a bad thing.
Could be worse.
Yep. All right, so let's roll into the intro. I think I'm going to get the title right. Here we go. All right, welcome to the Multifamily Unscripted show with your co-hosts Scott Hollister, Sam Grooms, and Ben Leybovich. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. How we doing?
I'm doing great, but you definitely did not get the name right. Multifamily Syndication Unscripted.
Oh, I knew it. It's just been too long in between.
That's hilarious.
All right, quite the year for you guys, right? So a lot of growth, a lot of lessons learned, a lot of accomplishments, and education. So we're going to kind of wrap it all into one. Ben, why don't you just give us a layout, see how the season's going to go?
Hell do I know. It's even worse than the first season. You know, when we started at one of the first episodes, I remember saying, hey, we're wearing the same clothes because we're recording 3 shows each time we sit down, 3 shows per day, and we don't know how many shows we end up with. This is even worse. This season is even worse because what I think the intention here is that this season has been extraordinarily action-packed. Sam and I have done a lot of stuff, and so we just want to debrief. The entire season 2 is a debrief. I think there's a lot of everybody likes to talk fancy and dress this up and put lipstick on it. You know, the whole sport of real estate and specifically syndication is a hot subject. We want to shed a little reality light, so to speak, on it, what it really looks like from within the trenches, as related to our experience. And so where this conversation leads us, we don't know. Think of it as 3 guys having tea at a dining room table for about 3 hours or whatever it is. And we'll just splice half hour at a time. We'll find a place to stop and, start the next episode. But by and large, we're trying to think of questions you guys might ask us if you had us at that table and answer those questions. And how this conversation flows, we don't know how many episodes we end up with. We don't know. We want to be helpful. We want to paint more of a colorful and true picture of what our experiences have been. And our experiences are, we bought about almost 500 units. That's $50 million by acquisition. We are remodeling right now, have taken interior renovations in-house, have started a construction company. Sam and I are remodeling 20 to 30 units per month. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts right now. We want to give you kind of a bird's eye view on what that looks like, so that when you think syndication, when you think multifamily, you have a little bit more perspective on what that really means, how that really works, what the dynamics really are. Structurally, how this season 2 comes out, we don't know. We're just going to wing it. We're just going to talk until we've said everything we feel we need to say to give you enough of a good picture on
Let me interject.
What we've done.
If you don't set an end time for Ben, he's just going to keep talking. So we have to have some kind of limit, right?
This is true. This is, by the way, there are 2 people in Ben's life who are allowed to interrupt Ben. Patricia Leybovich is one. Samuel is the other. That's it. Frickin' Scott, don't think that because you're on this podcast, she can interrupt me. That's just not how that works.
And Ben actually feels that way. He actually told that to our broker yesterday.
I did. Well, yeah, because, my wife and you, that's it. That's how it is.
Too good.
But I hope this is what you wanted to get out of me, right, Scott? This is basically it. And now we get into the conversations. And I think format wise, Scott's going to ask us questions. Sam and I are going to answer to the best of our ability. You're not going to see the dirty, dirty sausage factory, the very back of it. We're not going to go that deep, but we will say enough to paint enough of a reasonable, logical, and honest picture to give you an honest perspective on what it's like to play with the big boys, essentially, is what it comes down to.
Definitely. And that's my vision is I want to pull that out of you, right? So one of my favorite things to do is sit down with a seasoned real estate investor and ask them questions. So not only can I, learn about a certain process and try to skip past, things that you might not know in the beginning of your career. And one of my favorite questions is, what did you do on your first 1 to 5 deals, right? I might not be on the level of someone who's, purchasing $100 million building, but I want to know about what's that first duplex, triplex, okay, or what's that syndication process that you did in the beginning, because it's still fresh in your mind. You're still going through it. And I think that reason and that, being in your forefront, I think you're better off at teaching someone than looking up to someone that, has a massive, portfolio so far. So I like being able to leave those little nuggets, for the audience so they can pick up, and try to learn and do their best.
Definitely.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's roundtable. Let's get right into it. So quick overview of last year and how many deals did you guys close on? And we'll talk about that first one.
You want to take that, Sam?
Yeah. So Ben already mentioned it, but in our first year, we did 4 deals, 500 units, about 50 million in acquisitions, and we raised about 20 million.
Awesome. Just a walk in the park, right?
Yep. Not a bad first year.
Yeah, exactly. So I remember seeing you guys, I think it was a Facebook photo, and I'm pretty sure, but I'll ask. I think it was both of you in a bed and you were just underwriting some deals in a hotel room, missing out on here and there. Is that true? I think if I'm calling that back right.
So I was in the bed. Ben was standing next to the bed. Let's get that clear.
All right. Good thing I asked.
Both in the bed. Although, I tried, but it didn't work out.
We were able to get two beds in the room. That was actually us in Indianapolis. So we hadn't gotten a deal yet, and we were underwriting in other markets. And Indianapolis was one of the ones we were considering. Ben had a few connections there, and we were in best and final at a deal out there that we ended up losing on. But like they said, some of the best deals are the ones that you don't get, because I don't know if we'd be where we are today, especially in the market like Phoenix, if we had gotten that deal.
But
definitely,
let me take you a step back, because it all comes down to partnership. And we're going to come back to this theme. Like before Sam, I've never had a partner, ever. Was terrified of the idea, didn't see any value in the idea. And, my wife was my only partner, that's it. And, the way Sam and I hooked up, and it's tongue and groove kind of thing, that time frame where we're getting on the plane, we're going to Indianapolis, we think we got about 1 chance in 100 that we will get the deal. But the romance behind it, I don't mean like romance in the classical sense, but I mean the energy behind finding someone who is on the same wavelength, who is interested in the same things for most of the same reasons, thinks about things very similarly the same way, and complements your skill set. The romance behind it, the excitement, and it's quiet excitement. It's not like bombastic. It's a very, very interpersonal kind of thing. I mean, that's what I remember from those times, from those days. I'm talking about it like it happened 25 years ago. That's a year and a half ago.
It does seem like 25 years ago, though.
Yeah, it does seem like 25 years ago. But I want to stress that because this is a difficult business. It's a challenging business. There's a lot of dynamics. There's a lot of moving parts. You really got to want to do it to persevere in it. You just really got to want to do it. And again, the thing that really comes to my mind about those times, yes, we were sitting at 5 a.m. in the morning and until 8 in the evening, dialing in our underwriting and things like that. But the thing that I really remember is the energy behind, okay, I think I'm sitting on the right track now. And we're barely moving. We may not even be moving yet. We're barely moving. We're just, it's like that gigantuous ball that you are trying to get it to roll, but it's kind of getting there, but not really at that point. But the energy you feel in being in the right place at the right time with the right person, that's what I remember about that. And I don't know how else to describe it, but when it's right. And that's what it takes. It takes something like that. At least
amazing
in my experience.
Yeah, and I think that's great that you've found a partnership that you each complement each other. So in that ball you talked about, right, that just to get that moving and get that first deal. So what was that frustration like of, keep losing out on each deal, and what kept you, sticking to your underwriting guidelines? Did you have something that you had to go by, and was it tough sticking to it for that first one because you wanted to get a deal, I'm assuming?
And so I don't know if we had pressure to change our underwriting guidelines too much. The thing is, when you get to these best and finals, you might have the best price and you're still not going to get the deal. So it was more than just coming up with a higher offer price and changing your underwriting. You have to be in the broker's face, be in multiple best and finals, and be around them multiple times before they will suggest to the seller that you should get awarded the deal. So a lot of times we'll have the best offer in best and final, and then they'll go to the second best, someone who they've had a relationship with, and say, if you come up to this price, basically giving them our price, you get the deal. So it's not a true best and final in that sense. But so we didn't necessarily get pressure, but we knew we just had to be consistent and be in the broker's face and just keep going at it and chugging along to get our first one.
And
That's
having
awesome.
said that, of course, if you look, as I look at our early underwriting, I just laugh because we weren't even close. So having said what Sam just said, which is absolutely true, we did dial in our underwriting. But it's not that, in this market, there's an expectation that you can't leave anything on the table. You have to be that good at knowing how to underwrite, seeing the angles. And it gets infinitely easier after you have some trailing financials to look at. You cross the paradigm from, wondering where to even begin, than to taking an educated guess, and then to absolutely knowing how much things are going to cost and how things work, simply because you have trailing numbers to prove. So our underwriting right now looks quite different from what it did 2 years ago when we first started dialing it in.
Well, yeah, if you go even that first 6 months that Ben and I started underwriting, the time before it started to when we got our first deal, it changed dramatically. And like Ben said, it's pretty embarrassing if you go back to when we very first started to the time we got our first deal, how simplistic our underwriting was.
Mm-hmm.
So unpack that on that first one. So what key measures did you use to get your own trailing 12 and those educated guesses to feel confident enough to get that first one under contract?
Well, we guessed.
Educated.
Well, we talked a lot about it in the first season, right? A lot of it's just averages. So if you don't have your own data, and so Ben and I, we're very specific on what we buy. So there's a lot of similarities between our properties. So now we know how to underwrite exactly what we're going to buy. where you can still get averages from different publications that we mentioned in the first season. And they're going to get you close, but we were able to dial it in a little bit further with our specific type of property.
Right. And so the difference between Ben and Sam now and Ben and Sam 16 months ago is that Ben and Sam 16 months ago were the average buyer, a very smart but average buyer. Ben and Sam today are above average because we don't need to rely on those averages. We have our own averages. We know where the nationally publicly published figures are going to be. We're going to do better, where we're going to do not as well. We know that stuff. This is what I mean by saying we don't have to rely on national data, regional data. We have our own data at this point. It's helpful to have trailing financials, so you don't have to guess about these things. Okay, but on the first deal, you don't have anything, and so you're going to go to the IRM report. You're going to find Arizona, you're going to find Phoenix, and you're going to see what the OPEX is.
And you can even drill it down further. You can look at garden style apartments, which is mostly what we see here in Phoenix. You can look at certain year of construction range.
Yeah, vintage. You can see boiler properties. You can see individually metered properties. They're subdivided. And there's a number of different publications that track that. And we reference those today still. I mean, that's the starting point. It's just that Phoenix is a 5 million population city now with a lot of different kind of buildings. And so looking at those averages will get you close enough, but it's not going to dial you in. You really need to have some trailing data of your own for the kind of building you buy to really dial it in.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
So the first 3 properties that we bought were all the exact same year of construction. So even that, we no longer have to work with a range like in the IRM reports. We have 1 year. We know we have the exact same mechanicals. You know what the exact costs are going to be. Similar landscaping.
And the only adjustment you are making is for the fact that one property is 20 units more than the other one. So how do you adjust for certain costs that are property level costs that are getting spread over 20 more units? And we can talk a little more later about those specifics, but that's what makes you extremely effective, is being able to completely dominate those numbers. You're no longer making assumptions. You know stuff.
So we have quality partnerships, broker relationships, underwriting. So what other about the process, Sam, was the hardest part about getting that first deal? Can you go back and, pull a couple more things?
And I somewhat touched on it. So I think it's getting the broker to just recommend you as a buyer to the seller. He basically has to tell the seller that he has confidence that you'll close, because there's a lot of work involved in once you get a deal under contract to get to that finish line. And if you have a false start, with what they call a false start, where it doesn't close and he has to go back to market to get another buyer, that's a lot of work and a lot of time involved. And nobody wants to do that. And it's the broker's reputation on the line. So you have to basically be able to convince that broker that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. And that's a lot of work when you haven't done it before.
Yeah.
Right. Not only that, but you have a lot of times in the current market where the seller is going to be 1031 exchanging into another property. So your deal falling apart has dramatic impact potentially on the seller and his 1031. And so the broker is the one ends up looking like a schmuck for recommending you, and then you don't close. So that's a situation you never want to be in. But when it's your first one, the question is, Sam, how do you get the broker who doesn't know you from Pete to go to bat for you? That's what Scott's asking. How do we get the broker?
We had to convince him that we knew our numbers first. So you have your underwriting, you're not going to be surprised by anything, and that you have your equity lined up. So for the numbers, we got our PM to go out to the property with us, look over all the mechanicals, look at the roofs, look at the plumbing. We showed them our underwriting. We worked with our PM to dial it in. And basically they had faith that we knew everything about the property, that nothing was going to surprise us, that we would back out or try to adjust the price. And then we started working with a broker that had a good relationship, we started working with a mortgage broker that had a good relationship with the broker we were trying to buy from. So that way he can vouch for us, and that we had the equity lined up, we had the debt lined up. So you have to get all of that in place before, so that you can give the broker confidence that you're going to be able to close.
So
That's amazing. Yeah.
when Sam says we got our PM to go out, this is a full service property management company. They have probably close to 25,000 units under management. They have a construction arm, the whole thing. So what it means when we say we got the PM to go out to the property, it means that we got these people in the inspection, in the construction arm, in the property management arm, to take time out of their day without knowing us from Pete, to take a chance and take a half day and go out to the property and call the subs to get up on the roof, to look at the boiler, to look at the HVAC, to look at the, whatever, okay? And look at the unit types, look at the unit, kitchen sizes, look at, this wasn't a dialed in kind of thing, but it was a significant prelim kind of an inspection to get us reasonably close to where the expectation of the numbers might be. Now, again, this is one of those things, and I mentioned in the beginning that we've now taken a lot of those functions in-house. Why? Because we know this. We don't have to worry about this. We don't even need to do many of the things that we did. But when you're new, you have to do that. So to get the PM to give you the time of day to allocate resources to accommodate this, which you need in order to give the broker some confidence. Then you go into Berkadia offices and you sit down with the broker, and to get that broker to believe that you know what you are doing and that you are working within an ecosystem of professionals that is more likely than not to facilitate your successful outcome. It is challenging, no question about it. You have to be, yes, you don't know factual stuff because you don't have any trailing data, but as far as the average is concerned, the numbers, the underwriting, you have to be extraordinarily well educated. That's all you have at that point. You go in to talk to the broker, you show them your underwriting. If it looks like Marcus and Melichab, get the fuck out of there. If it looks like you're going to run the property at $3,600 a door, OPEX, get out of there. They're going to laugh you out of their office. There's certain things that you must know, at least relative to the averages, for them to take a double take and look at you and say, maybe I better talk to these people and figure out how much they know and whether or not I should try to hold their hand a little bit on the first one or second one.
They basically want to see that you're educated and that you're professional. And if you can display that, I think anybody's willing to work with you. I mean, these people all make money by you buying that property, right? Everybody that we've talked about gets a piece of that. So they want you to be successful. But when you show up with a team of 8 to 10 people, you've never bought a property, but you're showing up with a team of 8 to 10 people in one of the biggest property management companies in the area, the broker takes notice. And even though you haven't bought a property, I mean, you look like you have a big operation.
So throughout this season 2, I think we should probably throw out one-liner advices kind of a thing. And my first one is the first relationship that you might want to consider establishing is with a property manager.
Absolutely agree.
Because that's going to tee up your relationship with the real estate broker, with the mortgage broker, with, in the end, owners.
And actually, To go to a step further, to tee it up, I mean, we asked for referrals. So we asked our property management, the owner of the company, who we should use for our mortgage broker. And he said the big guy here in town is, and the guy at Berkadia that we used, that he had a relationship with the broker we were trying to get the deal from. Then that lender also gave us the referral to our real estate attorney. So you're just getting referrals. And once you start with that PM, you can get all of the referrals you need to get everything teed up.
I love that. I love how you built confidence around the broker through those arms, right? If you had the financing, the property management, those relationships are key. So it's not so much that you're bringing them out to dinner.
The broker, I asked him once upon a time, I said, how come you gave us a shot? He said, I called around. I called Luke at Berkadia, and I called Shelton at the PM. You're working with the right people. Your underwriting makes sense. Now it's just a question of execution. I thought I'd give you a chance.
That's awesome. So I think the biggest thing with this is you have all that set up, but even more so is having the capital lined up. So how did you portray that confidence to your investors, and how did you get, people that you know and trust to believe in what you're doing, especially for the first one?
Well, you lie. I mean,
Ben says
I don't believe that, Ben.
Yeah, Ben says that very facetiously.
Yeah, that jokester him.
But listen, every time you go into syndication is just kind of one step at a time kind of deal. So from deal to deal, you never know where your next deal is going to come from. Like right now, it's been about a month and a half, 2 months since we closed Suncrest. We've now started shopping. I don't know where the deal is going to come from. I don't know what it's going to look like. So raising money is kind of like that as well. I mean, yeah, you have on that first deal, we needed to raise $3.5 million, which was a nice chunk. Did I have it sitting there ready to go? Of course not. We needed to raise it. So do I have a complete guarantee that the money will be there? No, I don't. Do I have complete faith in myself that I'll be able to raise it? Yeah, I do.
Well,
and so that's got to be enough.
Yeah, and that's what I want to pull out is if you only had, let's say, 50% of, a verbal, where did you get that faith from, right? Was it faith in the deal being so good, faith in the team being so good, kind of all wrapped up into one?
Well,
because that's a big jump.
Yes and yes.
Yeah.
So the deal has to be good enough. Faith in myself, yes, but also, and I don't want people to read that the wrong way, but when your back's to the wall and you have no retreat path, you get shit done. That's just how life is. And for me, it was a very interpersonal thing because I was a landlord. I was buying duplexes, 5plexes, 10plex. I mean, that's what I was doing. And then that cup overfilled. And I wasn't that guy anymore. That cup wasn't enough for me. So what guy am I now? And this is, call it midlife crisis. Of course it wasn't, but it's that kind of a serious kind of thing. What about my life? Well, you know what? When raising $3.5 million to get the deal done is about who you are, you get it done. You just get it done.
I mean, there were plenty of times where we were very nervous. And I think that actually happens in every deal. There's, even if it's very briefly, a day or two, you're going to have times where you think, did we get in over our heads on this one?
So at that point, what advice do you have, right? Do you try to take a step back and look at the scope of things and know that during that 30 to 45 day, process till you close, is there something that you guys like to do? Say, hey, we've been through this. We've got this. Stay focused.
Well, that's usually my message to Ben every day during the raise.
But I think with the raise, I want you to think in terms of planting a tree, a citrus tree or an apple tree. If you want an apple, you first have to plant the seed, which then grows into a baby tree, which then matures for a couple of reasons. Then you can't take the fruits the first year. And then you take them, you take them off and you regrow them so the tree is healthy. Then a couple of years after doing that, now you've got a fruit-bearing apple tree or whatever it is.
Mm.
So raising money is the same way. You can't, this idea that money will come if the deal is good, that's true in my life because I've been planting these trees for over a decade. But if you're brand new to this, that's fallacy. So raising money is not a function of asking for money. It's a function of attracting money to yourself. It's a function of making sure that people know who you are, what you do, and standing relationships. So even though you don't have the money sitting in the bank, you have a lot of people who know that potentially there might be something interesting going on in your life that they would want to take part of or part in. So it's a long process. You just can't go 0 to 60 like a Tesla in 2.9 seconds. That's just not how that works in multifamily. Now, in my life, kind of, you know, with 2 Teslas in the garage, I have to say I enjoy that very phenomenon. But raising money, that's not how that works. So the advice number 2 that I can give people is I see this a lot. People putting themselves out there with some kind of stupid ass messaging that I help people invest in multifamily. Well, first of all, it's questionable how SEC compliant that messaging is in the first place. And secondly, it just doesn't work as well as people coming to me and saying, hey, can I invest with you without me having to go and ask for it?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that happens once for a long time. You deliver value to people. You create relationships. You create a perspective on who you are and why people should invest with you and things of that nature. I've been teaching people real estate for over a decade. I have a lot of students, and a lot of them are quite successful, and a lot of them have become my investors, and it kind of builds on itself. But the point being, it was never a thing where I went out and I said, hey, I got a deal, give me some money. That's not how that works. You have to have those relationships in place. And to build those relationships, you have to deliver value first. You have to give first. And all of that takes time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, you know, if you look at prodigious fundraisers like, for instance, Cardone, that's what everybody does. It's just that he's got a bigger bullet pulpit than me. So he's got a TV show and a podcast and everything else. So he's able to reach more people than I can reach. And therefore, more people believe in him, trust him, and trust him with their money. And they come to him and they say, can we invest with you? We like the way you think. We like the way you do things. But the point is, he took the initiative to put himself out there, to teach people something, to give people perspective, to do something for people that they perceive as value. And then they come back to him and say, okay, here's the next step. Well, that's how that works. And that's all I've done over, many, many years.
And to get that first one, you're going to almost have to transform your identity in the eyes of your investors, which is at that time just your colleagues, your friends, family. They're going to have to go to see you as someone who is doing real estate, is buying big properties. And it's going to be difficult. I mean, Ben had 10 years to lead up to that point. And if you don't have that experience, it's going to be difficult to change that perception that your investors are going to have of you into someone who can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So how critical was creating that, that leadership platform, that coaching platform, giving out that content for you, going forward?
Well, that was the essence of my being able to raise money. I mean, that's it.
Mm-hmm. So how would you recommend someone who's, on that first path? They may have a couple deals on their belt, but what type of platform are you looking to recommend? Say, hey, create a podcast, create a blog, create, some type of thing that so people can see you being an expert out there.
The big path I see people doing is just going to tons of conferences, seminars, whether there's valid or not. They go to tons of conferences, seminars. They post all over social media that they're going to these things. And that way people just start associating them with large multifamily syndications.
Mm-hmm. Now, education on the forefront, right? So getting this started, that first, that deal leading up to it, you've been putting out content, you're seen as an expert, you're already investing in real estate. So what was some of the first things that you picked up that you learned about, syndication and how to use it as an investing tool?
Well, this goes back to season one, I think. The paradigm change is that there's a long-term hold concept, and then there's a long-term flip concept. Syndication is a long-term flip. Why? Because while cash flow is important, equity is more important. Why? Because equity allows us to either refinance or sell. Why? Because people want to know before they put money in how and when you're going to get their money out. So that reality, when you are a small investor and you're buying a 10-unit building and you're just interested in cash flow, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's just you, it's just your money. What you find out very quickly is that when you're dealing with millions of people's money, the question of when can I get my money back comes right before the question of how much interest are you going to make me on my money. So it's arguably more important to understand the exit. And the exit is all about equity. It's not about cash flow. We back into the equity through the cash flow, but that's just mechanics of it, as we discussed in season one. So with equity being front and center, you're not talking about conceptually a long-term hold, you're talking about a flip. Even though it may take a long term to flip it, it's a flip. So that's a completely different approach to multifamily. It's a completely different approach to underwriting. And until you cross that paradigm, I don't see how you can attract money. I suppose people do, but I can't wrap my head around how, because I've never met any investor that wants to say, here's my money, hold it forever. I just don't even care. I don't know that happens. In my experience, it doesn't happen. So understanding this paradigm shift of going from here's a long-term hold to here's an asset that we're going to hold for a while, but we're really trying to flip it to create an equity position. The underwriting process, the mentality changes 180 degrees. I hope that answers your question. Sam, got anything to add?
Nope.
If there's like any type of, books or mentors, can you point to anybody that helped you along the way? You didn't have to drop names, but was there any critical person that kind of helped guide you, down that path?
Well, I've always looked at what Brian Burke did. I've known Brian for about, 5-6 years. Always thought about him, and it's interesting because the way I kind of arrived at him is that of all of the people on Bigger Pockets and what have you, the things that he posted and the things that he said about real estate just made me think. And I was 95% there in understanding everything, but it was the 5% that was missing. That I was trying to
Mhm.
crack that nut. And so I kept coming after him, asking questions about that. And we've never had a traditional mentorship relationship. I mean, it's a friendship more so than anything else. But it's always been good to have access, specifically early on when I was trying to figure out the formula, really.
Mhm.
So a lot of people raise money, a lot of people syndicate deals. Everybody has their own way. Sam and I do it quite differently, I think, from Brian in some respects now. But in the early stages, yeah, I mean, I liked what I was seeing from him. But also, you read books by Sam Zell and others, and you just begin to understand the big money was made on the exit.
Mhm.
That's where the big money was made. And so you begin to, again, it goes back to that paradigm shift. Is it really a long-term hold? Or is it something else, a different kind of animal?
Yeah. Well, I love how you said that. I love that last 5% thing because I can echo that same thought. I think there's enough publications, books, contents out there to get that 95% of, the understanding of, okay, I think I know how to do it. But in order to really be successful and really understand that last 5%, that expertise, that's difficult, right? Trying to crack that. So
Mm-hmm.
what is that what you recommend, is getting someone who's been in the business and kind of, try to get under them, or what does that look like?
I think there's
Yeah.
two ways, right? It's finding someone, or the harder way is going through it yourself and learning by experience.
Well,
And
I have to take a step back. Sam Grooms did it different from me. But Sam Grooms is unequivocally, no question in my mind, one of the most brilliant people I know. And his relationship with numbers is unlike any other person I've ever met, including the Burks and the Sells and the Cardones and everybody else. So it's not fair to look at Sam and see what he has done, which is go from 0 to 60 in a split second, and to think that you can do it. He's just not like me. He's not like any of us. It's unfair. It's great for him, but it would be silly to think that people can do that. That's why I always laugh. He posts things on Bigger Pockets, and everybody's just like, and I'm going myself and thinking, you fucker, you think you're going to do this? You think you're going to do this?
but I
Just
had
because
my own
Sam says you can.
5%, right?
Huh?
It was just I had my own 5% remaining. It was just different from what most people have.
Mm.
So what happened to me is being in the trenches. That's what was required. I didn't have the classical mathematical / bookkeeping / accounting / economics training. I didn't have any of that. So what I learned from starting buying property in 2006 and continually buying, all these years, and looking at the trailing numbers and kind of identifying dynamics and backing into the truths through experience, through School of Hard Knocks. Sam did it very differently. He's able to look at those numbers and identify realities that took me a decade to formulate, which is not something. I mean, I don't mean to say that he had the complete formula. There are certain things you need. The dynamics you have to experience. You need experience to understand how certain things are going to evolve. He was missing that.
I was missing the human aspect. So I had all the numbers and knew how stuff should run,
Right.
but what is the human variable that can be
Right.
thrown into that? And how do you predict
Right.
that?
That's perfect way to put it.
Mm.
And that's because he didn't do it. So, that's why you trust the autopilot more than you trust yourself, because the computer is less likely to make a mistake, right? So but the computer isn't running the property. The computer isn't renting the units. The computer isn't fixing the furnace or the leaky roof or whatever. It's the humans that are doing that. So what does that mean? How does that impact what your computer spits out on a spreadsheet? That's the part he was missing, but that's the part I had after 15 years in the trenches. So that's one of the ways, tongue and groove kind of partnership that makes a lot of sense. We come at it from a slightly different perspective, but because we're able to massage our perspectives together, we're able to achieve a pretty dialed in picture. But I do not recommend going big right away, simply because unless you are Sam, and unless you are lucky to partner with someone, who complements you totally and has that missing component, you need that experience. And so there's a lot of people, Cardone and everybody else, it's become really sexy to talk about, hey, skip the duplex, the fourplex, go straight to 100. Well, it's true that there are inefficiencies present in that duplex and fourplex that are going to be a pain in your ass, no question about it. But the pain you are likely to inflict upon yourself by going straight to 100 is so incomparably greater potential than the pain you will have to endure while you are learning what you need to know and developing your intellectual worth on those duplexes and fourplexes and sixplexes.
And I think it's less about the unit count than having some experience in the trenches before you take on other people's money. So having your own money on the line before your other people.
Yeah. And it's like you said, I mean, you both hit the nail on the head with that one. House Hack 3.5% FHA loan, that gives you your sea legs. One, real estate management, landlord, the buying, understanding what goes into that. And, if it starts to slide, 3.5% over 200K, $7,000, you can take those bruises, but trying to take a bruise on $100,000 or, 100 unit property that you really don't know about. And two, like you said, Sam, I think the most important thing is you're playing with other people's money. Like, that's not a joke. You have to have that education, that knowledge, that experience lined up before you even go. Yes, on the standpoint from an argument, what would you rather buy, 100 unit or a duplex? That seems pretty easy, but not necessarily the best advice. So,
So the third advice. So the first advice was the first relationship is a property manager. That's if you are ready for syndication. If you are going to follow our third advice, which is start small, you are the property manager. That's the whole point in buying small before you grow into the big, so that you experience those dynamics. You understand, you internalize the human factor. To think you're going to buy a fourplex and you're going to ship it off to a property manager, that's a whole another conversation, whether or not that works well. But aside for that, that wasn't the point. The point was for you to learn. You are the property manager. So, number one advice, as it relates to syndication, a good institutional PM, getting them on your side when you are ready for syndication, or a large multifamily, if you're a single owner buyer, that's fine too. Getting the right kind of PM on your side, that's step one. I can't even remember what advice 2 was. Did anybody write it down?
Broker relationships.
And advice 3, start small.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Multifamily Syndication Unscripted with your hosts, Ben, Sam, and Scott. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on Multifamily Syndication Unscripted.